I started working at Palermo's Pizza in September 2022. I needed the job. Things at home were a mess. My stepmom, Diane, made sure I never forgot I wasn't hers. She didn't hit me or anything, but she didn't need to. Every day felt like a test I couldn't pass. Constant jabs about being lazy, not good enough. How I'd end up like my real mom, who left. I just want a way out of the house for a few hours every day. So I took the night shift delivering pizzas. The job wasn't bad. It was quiet. Usually I liked driving around with music on and the smell of hot food in the car. People were decent. Tips weren't amazing, but they kept gas in my tank and bought me a little piece. This happened on a Thursday night. I remember because I had school the next morning and I was hoping for an easy night. We were slow, just me, the cook and the girl at the front desk. Around 9:30 p.m. an order came in for a medium pepperoni cash payment. The house was only 10 minutes from the store. A single-story ranch home out near the woods, right where the newer houses meet the older farmland. I pulled up a little before 10. The street was dead quiet. No porch light on. I double-checked the address. Right house. I grabbed the pizza, walked up the drive and knocked. Nothing. No sound. No footsteps inside. I knocked again, waited. Still, nothing. I figured maybe they were grabbing cash or in the bathroom. So I stood there. Maybe 30 seconds passed. I knocked a third time, louder this time, and called out, "Palermo's still dead quiet." I was just about to pull out my phone to call the number on the order when I noticed something. The curtains in the front window, just to the left of the door, moved. Not a lot, just a subtle shift, like someone peeked out and let them fall back. I leaned a bit to the side, tried to see through, but the lights inside were off. Just the dull blue glow of a TV in a back room. I waited a little longer. Maybe 2 minutes passed, tops. I was about to turn back and write it off as a prank order. Maybe call the store to cancel, when I saw headlights in my side mirror. 2 cop cars, no sirens, just rolling up slow like they didn't want to draw attention. One parked across the street. The other pulled right up behind my car, blocking me in. I didn't move. I just stood there on the porch, pizza in hand. The doors opened. 2 officers stepped out. One older, maybe late 40s, the other younger and taller. The older one grabbed gloves from his belt and started putting them on as he walked up. The younger guy popped the trunk of the cruiser and pulled out a shotgun. My mouth went dry. The older cop stopped halfway up the lawn and called out, "Hey, son, are you delivering to this house?" I nodded. "Yeah, pepperoni." No one's answering. He looked at the door, then back at me. "There won't be any deliveries tonight," he said flatly. "Go back to your car and stay there." I didn't argue. I walked slowly back to my car and got in. I set the pizza box in the passenger seat and locked the doors. I watched them from the rear view mirror. The older cop went up the porch steps, looked at the door, then motioned to the other guy. They didn't knock. They didn't announce themselves. They just stood still for a second. Then the younger one moved around the side of the house, staying low. My hands were shaking a little. I still don't know what made me glance at the window again. Maybe I expected someone to open the door and take their food finally. But when I looked up, the curtain was pulled again. This time I saw a part of face, just a sliver, one eye and part of forehead staring straight out at me. It was enough to freeze me in place. Not because of what I saw, but how? Still it was. No movement, no blink, just watching. Then it disappeared again. The cops didn't storm in or shout. I sat there for what felt like 20 minutes, maybe more. Eventually another car showed up unmarked. A guy in plain clothes got out and talked to the officers. They nodded, pointing at the house, then toward my car. He walked up to me and tapped on the glass. I rolled it down a bit. "You're clear to go. We'll explain things to your boss. Just head back to the store." I wanted to ask something. What's going on? Or am I in trouble? But he already turned away. I reversed carefully and drove off. Back at Palermo's, my manager just stared when I told him what happened. Said he didn't get any call from the customer and no one had canceled the order. He looked at the ticket and said the phone number had too few digits. It was fake. He let me clock out early, which I appreciated, but I didn't sleep that night. The next day I checked the news. Nothing. I kept checking for a week. Still nothing. No report, no arrest, no police activity in that neighborhood. It was like it never happened. A few days later, out of habit, I checked our delivery records from that night. That address, it had never been used before. The order had been typed manually. No phone numbers attached to the profile. No email, no notes. Just an address. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had waited longer or knocked again, or if the cops hadn't shown up when they did. Whoever was in that house had been expecting someone, and I'm still not sure it was me. This happened to me when I was 7 years old, living in a quiet suburban neighborhood in southern Pennsylvania. It was fall, mid-October, I think. The leaves had that perfect amber color, and the air always smelled like a mix of chimney smoke and damp wood. I had just started second grade, and for the first time ever, I was allowed to walk home from school on my own. The walk wasn't far, just 3 blocks, and the neighborhood was considered safe. My mom worked from home, and she'd usually be waiting at the window to wave at me when I got to the corner. That little wave made me feel like I was older than I was, like I was doing something grown up, even though my backpack probably weighed more than I did. Anyway, on this particular Friday, I was walking home like usual. I had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich in my lunchbox that I didn't eat during lunch, mainly because I had traded it for some Doritos and a Twinkie, and I was swinging my lunchbox back and forth like a pendulum. Everything felt normal, quiet, peaceful, until I saw the yard sale. It was on Ridgewood Drive, which was one street before my own, a house I'd never paid much attention to before. One of those old, sagging 2-story houses with ivy crawling up the porch posts had a few tables out front. Blankets were draped over some folding chairs, and items were spread out like a thrift store exploded in someone's front yard. What caught my eye was a small wooden box with brass corners and a latch. I don't know what drew me to it exactly. It just looked interesting. So I wandered over. That was mistake number 1. The man sitting in the chair behind the table was tall and thin. So thin, he looked like he could have been made out of wires and stretched rubber. He wore an oversized hoodie with the hood pulled low even though the sun was still out. His skin was pale and kind of blotchy, and his lips were cracked like he hadn't drunk water in days. But what I remember most were his eyes. They didn't look connected to anything, just blank, like they weren't seeing what they were looking at. He didn't say anything when I picked up the box. I just sort of held it in my hands, admiring the carvings on it. There were initials burned into the bottom. I asked him how much it was. He finally spoke, and I swear to you, even now his voice didn't match his body. It was high-pitched, almost too cheerful, like he was mocking me while pretending to be friendly. $3, he said, but you gotta promise to keep it closed. I frowned. Why? Some things aren't meant to be opened. They bite. I half laughed because I thought he was joking. I was 7. I didn't really understand when someone was being weird, creepy versus funny creepy. But something about his smile too wide, teeth too perfect, made me uncomfortable. I reached into my backpack for my small coin pouch, but he grabbed the box from my hands before I could even unzip it. No, he said, not today. I didn't know what to say, so I just stood there awkwardly. Then he leaned in, and even now, I swear his spine bent in ways it shouldn't have. You shouldn't be walking alone, he said, his breath hot and sour. Bad things happen to kids who don't listen. That's when I felt it, the fear, like a drop in my stomach, that feeling that something wasn't right. I turned and ran. I ran as fast as my legs would carry me, lunchbox swinging wildly, backpack bouncing against my back. I didn't stop until I hit the end of Ridgewood, where my street began. But as I was running, I heard his voice behind me, way too calm. See you next time, little man. When I got home, Mom wasn't at the window. She was inside on a call, and I didn't say anything. I was scared she wouldn't let me walk home anymore, and I didn't want that taken away from me. So I stayed quiet. That night, though, I had a nightmare. I was walking past that house again, and the box was open on the table. There were teeth inside. Not fake Halloween teeth, real ones. Yellowed, human-looking, still bleeding at the roots, and they were chattering, biting the air like they were starving. I woke up crying, but I didn't tell my mom. The next Monday, I walked a different route home around the block, avoiding Ridgewood. But on Tuesday, curiosity got the better of me, and I walked past the house again. The yard sale was gone. No tables, no blankets, no chairs. Just a bare, muddy lawn, and a porch light flickering in the middle of the day in him. It was the fall of 2022 when my wife Harper and I decided to take a much-needed night out. We had a toddler, Luna, who was just 2 years old at the time, with no family nearby to help. We turned to an online babysitting app called Sitter City to find someone reliable. After browsing dozens of profiles, we came across a woman named Evelyn. Her reviews were glowing, responsible, experienced, and with great references. She had worked with families with toddlers before, so we figured she would be perfect for us. Evelyn seemed exactly as described when we met her. She was in her late 20s, soft-spoken, and immediately clicked with Luna. She even reassured us that she had experience with kids who were a bit more energetic. She put us at ease, and we felt comfortable leaving our daughter with her for a few hours. After all, we were just going to a dinner party with some colleagues. Nothing too extravagant. The night started like any other. Harper and I had a quiet dinner at a friend's house, catching up with people from my college, talking about future projects and discussing my plans for the next semester. It was peaceful. I remember feeling a weight off my shoulders, knowing Luna was in good hands. We even checked in once to make sure everything was fine. Evelyn had put her to bed, and everything was going smoothly. It wasn't until we were on our way home that things started to feel off. The whole time we were out, I kept telling myself I was just being paranoid. After all, Evelyn was highly recommended, and everything seemed fine when we left. But as we approached our neighborhood, I felt a strange nagging sensation in my gut. When we arrived home around 11:30 p.m., the lights were dim, and the house was unusually quiet. I expected to hear Evelyn talking to Luna, maybe reading her a bedtime story. But there was only silence. I told Harper I'd go check in and make sure everything was okay. I found Evelyn in the living room, scrolling through her phone. Luna was in her crib, fast asleep, and everything seemed fine. Evelyn stood up when I walked in, smiled, and reassured me that everything had gone smoothly. But there was something off in her eyes, an anxious, almost hurried look. I shrugged it off, thinking it was just my imagination. As I walked through the house, checking each room to make sure everything was locked, I noticed something unusual. The window in the guest bedroom was slightly ajar. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe I had left it open by accident. But then a strange thought crossed my mind. Wasn't it supposed to be locked? I decided to check the cameras we had installed around the house. They weren't anything fancy, just basic security cameras, but enough to give us peace of mind. I opened the app on my phone and started scrolling through the footage. It wasn't until I reached the footage from earlier in the evening that my stomach dropped. Around the time we left for the dinner, Evelyn was walking around the living room, seemingly organizing things. But as I continued to watch, I saw her walk into our bedroom. The camera angle was slightly obscured, but I could make out the shape of her rummaging through the drawers. I leaned in closer, my heart racing. She was looking through our things. She wasn't just tidying up, she was searching. After a few minutes, I saw her slip something into her bag. It wasn't clear what it was, but it looked like one of my watches. Something I had left on the dresser that I knew was worth a few $100s. I couldn't believe it. She had been stealing from us. I quickly fast-forwarded to the next footage, which was from the kitchen. Evelyn was standing by the door, looking outside. Then, to my horror, I saw her unlock the back door. That's when I realized she wasn't just there to babysit. She was planning something. I had no idea if she was working alone or if she had someone outside waiting. But it was clear she had planned this out. She was going to let someone in. After she left, I stood frozen, trying to process what I was seeing. My mind was racing. I called the police immediately, feeling my hands shake as I explained the situation. The dispatcher reassured me that help was on the way, and we sat in silence for what felt like forever, waiting for the officers to arrive. I couldn't take my eyes off the footage, knowing Evelyn was still in the house. Was she trying to get away with it all, or was there someone else involved? When the police finally arrived, they were quick to assess the situation. They searched the house and found that Evelyn had indeed taken several items. But as they questioned her, something strange happened. She denied everything, even when confronted with the footage. She claimed she had been looking for something to make herself more comfortable. But it didn't explain the bag she had clearly been hiding under her jacket. They arrested her, but even as they let her out of the house, I felt unsettled. There was something about the whole situation that didn't sit right with me. Was Evelyn acting alone? Who else was involved? The unsettling truth hit me harder when I remembered the unlocked window I had found earlier. It was the only thing that kept me awake that night, wondering if we had narrowly avoided a break-in or something far worse. I couldn't shake the feeling that Evelyn's plan had been more sinister than just stealing a few things. That night, I lay awake in bed, my mind replaying the events over and over. What was Evelyn really after, and who was she working with? The police couldn't give me any answers, and we never heard from Evelyn again. It felt like there were too many unanswered questions. The only thing I knew for sure was that I had come too close to something much darker than I had ever expected. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like we weren't safe in our own home. I'm writing this on a quiet Sunday in March 2025, nearly 2 years after the night that almost made me drop my degree and fly straight back to Cape Town. The memory still taps me on the shoulder whenever I stay up late, so I'm setting it down the way I'd tell it to a friend. No melodrama, just what happened back in late May 2023. I was 26, a South African scholarship student pushing through a postgraduate economics diploma at Dublin City University. Exams were due the first week of June, and I needed a distinction to lock in a proper job and start wiring money home to my parents and 2 younger sisters. In Khayelitsha, I shared a split-level flat on Richmond Street with Liam Donnelly, an Irish computer science major who organizes life with color-coded sticky notes. That Monday night, he'd gone across town to revise with his friends Kevin and John, leaving me alone to cram exactly the way I liked it. Around 1:45, I brewed my 3rd mug of instant coffee and paced the lounge with a binder in hand. The muted TV threw orange streetlight across the panes, and every hour I knocked out 5 push-ups to keep myself awake. Just after midnight, a dull thud landed directly above the living room ceiling, like someone had dropped a stuffed backpack. The Georgian conversion was old, and I had heard neighbors before, but at that hour the building was usually silent. I froze, waiting for another thump. Nothing, I told myself. Someone upstairs had shifted furniture and went back to game theory notes. About an hour later, another heavier thud rattled the light fitting. This time I couldn't shake it. Phone torch in one hand, I climbed the narrow back stairs to our unused storage room. The door was still locked, the carpet undisturbed, windows latched. I even called out a quiet hello. No answer. No scuttling footsteps. Only the hum of distant traffic and my pulse. Feeling stupid for losing 10 minutes of study time, I went back downstairs. Fatigue finally caught up with me. A little after 3 in the morning, I stretched out on the sofa, textbook open on my chest. A few minutes later, something pressed firmly on my right shoulder, an unmistakably human squeeze. I shot upright, shouted, and nearly swung a fist before my brain registered Liam standing next to the couch with his hands raised. My heart hammered, so hard I tasted iron. I exhaled, then froze again. 2 stocky men were hovering by the lounge doorway, faces hidden behind cheap paper dust masks and dark hoodies, hands stuffed in jacket pockets. Liam rubbed the back of his neck and said, almost sheepishly, that Kevin's neighbor had his flat under noisy renovation, and the guys needed a quiet place to sleep before their exam. He gestured to the strangers like this were normal. Masks indoors at 3 a.m. felt anything but normal, yet I was too drained to argue. Muttering something like, sure, whatever, I shuffled to the kitchenette for water. By 20 to 4, I'd lost the fight against sleep. The last thing I remember is Liam spreading a spare duvet on the carpet while the 2 masked men sat cross-legged near the radiator. Saying nothing, pain exploded at the base of my skull. Some unknown time later, I'd pass out on the sofa. Now I was half rolled onto the floor, eyes watering, ears ringing. 2 silhouettes loomed over me. Same hoodies, same masks. It all started because I needed to clear out space in my apartment. It was Sunday morning, May 15th, 2022. I just moved into a new place, a modest one-bedroom apartment near downtown Columbus, Ohio. My parents had recently downsized and handed off some old furniture to me, including this large antique wooden cabinet. It was nice, sturdy, and probably valuable, but it was just too big for my small living space. I decided the quickest way to handle it was to list it on Facebook Marketplace. After snapping some decent pictures, I posted the cabinet online around noon. Within minutes, messages began popping up. Most were typical lowball offers, but one stood out, a guy named Derek, who messaged almost immediately, willing to pay my full asking price without any questions. Within 2 hours, Derek arrived at my apartment. He seemed friendly enough, mid-30s, casually dressed in jeans and a dark jacket. He inspected the cabinet carefully, more than you'd normally expect. He opened and closed the drawers, slowly ran his hand along the interior surfaces, and seemed overly interested in the dimensions of each compartment. At the time, I assumed he was just thorough, maybe a collector looking for authenticity. After agreeing it was exactly what he wanted, Derek quickly handed me the cash. He had a small truck parked outside and insisted on loading it himself, repeatedly declining my help. Looking back now, I realize how strange it was, but in the moment, I brushed it off, just grateful the cabinet was gone. Life continued normally for a couple of days. I almost forgot about Derek entirely, busy with work and settling into my new place. But then, around Wednesday evening after work, I first noticed something odd. While driving home, I glanced in my rearview mirror and saw a white sedan keeping pace behind me, never overtaking, never falling back, just steadily matching my turns. Lane changes everything. At first, I thought nothing of it. Time. But after 15 minutes, still seeing that same sedan in the mirror, I felt uneasy. To test my suspicion, I made a few unnecessary turns. The sedan followed closely each time. Eventually, I circled around a parking lot, and the sedan finally peeled away. I figured it might have been a coincidence, yet I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something wasn't right. The next day at work, sitting at my desk, my thoughts wandered back to the white sedan. Probably paranoia, I thought, until I left the office late that evening and spotted another car, a dark-colored SUV parked across the street from my apartment. The driver was sitting there, barely visible through tinted windows. I brushed it off again, though more hesitantly this time, and went inside quickly, locking the door behind me. By Friday, my anxiety was growing. I saw different vehicles behind me, multiple times, each following at a distance, always disappearing. When I tried to confirm my suspicion, it was subtle but undeniable. Someone was watching me. That weekend, I called my friend Matt, who worked in security. After I explained everything, he listened carefully, then suggested something I hadn't even considered. Check your car for a tracker. I felt a sickening twist in my stomach, hoping he was wrong. But Matt came over, and together we carefully searched my car. Under the seats, in wheel wells, under the bumper. Nothing. I almost felt relieved until Matt asked if I'd recently brought anything new into the apartment. That's when I remembered Derek and the cabinet. But the cabinet was gone. Sold to Derek. I mentioned this, feeling confused, until Matt paused and said calmly, "What about anything you might have touched, opened, or moved around?" My heart sank as I recalled Derek meticulously inspecting the cabinet. After selling it, I'd moved smaller belongings around my apartment. Items Derek had specifically handled, things he'd opened or touched. Panic rising, Matt and I immediately began searching through everything. Then we found it, a tiny black device, barely larger than a quarter, taped carefully inside the back edge of a small wooden drawer I'd kept from the cabinet. The drawer had been removable, and I'd used it afterward to store random items. Derek had clearly hidden the tracker inside. During his thorough inspection, Matt examined the device quietly, confirming it was indeed a GPS tracker. Suddenly, it all made sense. The following cars, the feeling of being watched. Derek had known exactly where I was at all times. We contacted the police immediately, handing over the device and explaining everything. They took it seriously, especially when I showed them Derek's profile on Facebook. But they cautioned that it was difficult to prove intent without more evidence. Derek's profile vanished shortly afterward, as if he'd anticipated being discovered. Weeks went by quietly. The police couldn't track Derek down. His name, his profile, everything appeared to have been fake. I changed my locks, installed cameras, and even bought a new phone. But the peace of mind I once had was permanently damaged. Months later, on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday evening, a package arrived at my door with no return address. Nervously, I opened it to find a single item inside one of the old brass drawer handles from the cabinet I'd sold Derek. No note, no explanation. My blood ran cold at the implication. He still knew exactly where I lived, knew exactly how to remind me he was still out there. The police had no leads, no way of tracking him down. We planned a simple adventure that night. Nothing wild, just a late-night walk to the next town. So we could say we did something different during winter break. The only path there without paying for a ride was a service tunnel that ran under the highway bridge. Walking across the bridge itself felt risky. If a sleepy driver drifted out of the lane, we would have nowhere to jump. So the tunnel it was. There were 7 of us. Logan, Carlos, Julian, Dylan, Bobby, Josiah, and me. Phones were almost dead because we had spent the day streaming music. Logan still had 5%, but even his screen was too dim to help. We carried lighters instead, flicking tiny flames on and off as we moved. The orange dots looked like fireflies in the long concrete throat of the tunnel. About halfway in, I noticed something that never should have been there. A shape walked ahead of Logan, leading us around beams and old debris. The person was tall, wearing a gray puffer coat. Whenever the lighter glow touched the coat, the fabric crinkled like plastic. At first, I assumed it was Carlos. He owned a similar jacket. But I could hear Carlos right behind me, joking with Bobby about slipping on the wet floor. We said nothing. It was colder inside than outside, and our breaths sounded like quiet whistles. The tunnel groaned whenever a truck rolled over the bridge above, so maybe that covered the stranger's footsteps. Still, I felt the extra presence. The way you feel there's one more stair than you expected. When we reached the far entrance, moonlight pooled across the rough snow. Logan turned, counting heads out loud. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then he frowned. Not to scare anyone, he said, but I saw somebody else walking in front of me back there. A whole person. Didn't one of you lead for a bit? Carlos and I answered together. We saw him, too. Julian laughed, thinking we were messing around. Yet his smile faded when he realized we were serious to him. Dylan, Josiah, Bobby, and Logan had been first the whole time. They never saw an 8 silhouette. That was only the beginning. We hurried up a snowy slope toward town. Our sneakers, filled with slush toes, went numb. We hoped to find a late-night cafe or gas station where we could sit and warm our feet. But the streets were empty. Behind a discount store stood several giant metal storage containers. Someone suggested hiding inside one to escape the wind. Bobby found an old axe head. No handle, just rusty iron. And like geniuses, we tried prying a padlock. An elderly woman on a porch across the alley screeched at us before we managed to open anything. We scattered, squeezing between the container and a chain link fence so tight it scraped our backpacks. We popped out into someone's yard, dashed through bushes, and cut across thin woods until we reached the local middle school. The plan was simple. Use the outdoor outlets near the cafeteria to charge at least one phone, then order pizza. Unfortunately, a night security guard spotted us the second our boots crunched across his flashlight beam. He yelled. We bolted. Logan cleared the first fence like an Olympic hurdler, arms spinning so wildly that Dylan shouted, "Bro looks like a cartoon cowboy." We laughed even while escaping. I dropped my phone on the second fence. Bobby, still clutching the axe head, stopped to help me fish it out of knee-deep powder. That delay cost us. By the time we reached the tree line, everyone else was gone. We followed their footprints to a narrow road, then to a trail lit only by cloud-filtered moonlight. The path ended at a lonely maintenance shed beside the woods. Faded security lamps glowed inside its windows. Logan, Josiah, and Dylan lingered near the trees, while Julian, Bobby, Carlos, and I stood by the trail. Julian, and I crept forward to peek. As we circled the building, a massive dog, at least we thought it was a dog, strode into view near the door. Its back was as high as my waist. I spun and shouted, "Big dog."